Oh, and by the way, being alive should not impede law enforcement's investigation. Ultimately, obviously, I've dealt with a little bit of intimidation tactics lately, you know? And I don't mean to hinder anybody from being able to continue doing their job. I could imagine it would be pretty inconvenient if you would think the job was done as far as burden of proof and evidentiary, you know, to end up discovering, oh, by the way, a piece, pretty much the piece of evidence that we would need to be able to prosecute somebody that, would be considered a threat to public safety. They have legs. Actually, they're one of that person's victims. And, stupidly enough, people ended up going ahead and thinking that the victim was the perpetrator. And you know how the gossip and rumor mill goes on that. But, yeah, one of the pieces of evidence, actually, the piece of evidence that we would need to prosecute, would need to be gotten by making the victim go for a whole new medical panel and actually go ahead and get their face x-rayed so that way it could actually be showed, during the prosecution process, the factor that the facial x-rays would show the amount of damage. And also, we need to try to prove that we didn't breach the Eighth Amendment with cruel and unusual punishment by knowing somebody's been walking around with their teeth jammed right into their skull for over a decade. No pain medication, no way to alleviate it, pretending to ignore the issue, despite the fact that this same person, throughout the entirety of their childhood, will, being physically abused, we never believed that they were physically abused. So there's kind of a lot of people eating crow that their jobs depend on this being as transparent as possible. Certainly, no one create a smokescreen. But yeah, he says not he's not opposed to going to the doctor, especially if there could be some type of fix for the pain. But we need to justify how 10 years with a broken, disfigured jaw getting ruthlessly and mercilessly mocked would not constitute as cruel and unusual punishment, and as well as the denial of any type of medical intervention to alleviate the pain while pretending that the pain didn't exist, while pretending that there was nothing wrong, pretending to not recognize, the amount of damage. And, yeah, as soon as he does that, that's when the timer starts on when he'll be able to present that right in a filing, right to the court. And, also, him doing this potentially actually ends up going ahead and being able to solidify the conviction of the person that he told us that he got abused by, but nobody believed him because everyone thought female, automatically not lying, you know? While at the same time, too, they were going around bragging about it, but they're also literally relying on him not going to the doctor to prevent from the charges greatly increasing from, you know, potential assault or assault with deadly weapon based on the amount of damage from the x-ray to potentially felonious aggravated assault. Oh, assault and battery. So, ultimately, we kind of need him to do what, that to be able to get our job done. So that way we can go ahead and say, hey, so due diligence was fully done. No way that this could end up going ahead and impeding an investigation. Can't obstruct justice. Literally was just clarifying, hey, um, this one step in the process haven't done. So doing that one step in the process will be able to go ahead and be able to give you a more accurate measure when it comes to the calculation of damages as well as the calculation of potential time in sentencing. It's what kind of makes it hard when you have to handle two different factors of law at the same time, doesn't it? Especially because it's kind of funny when people don't believe the person that's saying, like, hey, someone's trying to intimidate victim witness. So, yeah, there you go. That right there, that to know factor, especially because for any lawyer, I can tell you right now, I don't think there's a lawyer in this country that really, really would want to have to argue that somebody's medical records, despite the Americans with Disabilities Act and a doctor's Hippocratic oath that's supposed to act as an iron curtain between, the medical industry and insurance industries, it would end up showing coordination. And that right there, with price fixing and the laws on that, that would be a pretty dangerous loophole for anybody to exploit. It would literally lead a pathway to, you know, at any time, medical records could be of public interest, you know, to potentially prevent a public safety threat. I mean, ultimately, that would mean that the deciding factor is completely out of everyone's hands in every way. And yeah, and ultimately, it's like, how many more mistaken identities could somebody accidentally, be like using as an excuse to try to set up a situation for violence? You kind of seeing my point here? Like, imagine years down the road that you still had to worry that your past could creep up and just tap you on your shoulder just because the person that was trying to find a way for cooler heads to prevail ended up deciding to say, you know what, I can't endure the pain anymore. I need to go to the doctor. I need to get this situation fixed. I can't hold off on it any longer. This is literal torture. While at the same time, not wanting to present that as a deposition and a filing in a court of law, on having to explain all parts and all parties involved as far as that overlooked major Eighth Amendment foul, and which, by the way, Eighth Amendment is cruel and unusual punishment, and it's not even, trying to split hairs. It's saying, remember, it's not rules for me, not for thee. It's literally, this is one of those impacts that blanket throughout the entirety of the country because state law has to, follow constitutional guidelines as well as federal law and, follow all statutes involved. While at the same time, having to be able to, in no way, shape, or form, be contradictory to any type of, or an extension of any type of rulings that there's already been suppressions. And those suppressions being because of the unconstitutionality and the illegality of the material used in order to an attempt to wrongfully convict. While at the same time, that wrongful conviction could set a precedence that could end up actually reducing the amount of a punishment that actual violent criminals would be able to get away with. Because remember, too broad of a scope, that's a nope. Scope too narrow, right like an arrow. That's the studying tool that I had memorized on that. But yeah, civics.